Hey, this is Nate. You can also call me Nathan, but please never call me Nathaniel. I just wanted to put out a summary of my thoughts, my impressions of the recent Last Divinity DLC based on the public beta. So I played probably around 15 hours, so not like a ton, but enough to get a good feel for what are all the different mechanics, how does it work. I played almost exclusively Covenant 25 runs. The only time I didn't play Covenant 25 was when I was playing with my daughter. So really, every time I played was on Covenant 25. I really tried to push how difficult I could make the game to just test how some of the best builds operate in that setting. I played a lot of Wurmkin. About a little under half of my total playtime was just playing around with Wurmkin to get a feel for the clan. Yeah, so this video, it's coming a lot from the stream, my last stream where I did give impressions. I've edited it a little bit to try to organize my thoughts a little bit better. I was kind of all over the place, so tried to restructure it a bit to make it a little bit more palatable. Yeah, and then at the end, I'll give my overall impressions. What do I think, and how would I change things, or what do I want to see in the future? So hope you guys enjoy. If you did, please like, comment. If you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to subscribe. And just so you're aware, in between now and when the actual public beta comes out, I will still be putting out Monster Train content. The plan is to start putting out a lot more guide content, so stay tuned. But for now, here is my thoughts on The Last Divinity. Let's talk about Wurmkin as a clan. So again, summary of Wurmkin is it's got a couple of main mechanics. The first one is the Charged Echoes mechanic, which then interacts with a lot of different things. It interacts with this extract, so you extract candies to get abilities. You have Reap, which does damage based on the Charged Echoes. You have units that have plus damage based on Charged Echoes. You have interactions where you get a summon trigger based on Charged Echoes. Eggs also interact with Charged Echoes because you require Charged Echoes or some form of doing that in order to remove the shell. And the second is just the idea of using Consume. So you have a lot of Consume cards, and then they synergize with things that have, where is it, Etch, right? So Etch is every time you play a Consume card, you have an effect. So I did 6 runs in total. So it's not like I played a ton. I didn't play every single clan combination. But my impressions are that it is a little bit underpowered compared to a lot of the other clans. If you go with Spine Chief, and I think it is incredibly strong if you go with Echo Right. I think Echo Right is easily the superior of the two. Because the mechanics that Echo Right has, at least 2 of the 3 are much better than what you get out of Spine Chief. I think Reap is severely underpowered as a mechanic. It's very, very difficult to stack enough Reap to kill things like you would with Frostbite. So the way you have to look at Reap is Reap cannot be considered a boss killer. You have to consider Reap as a kind of backline kill. Which is fine. You don't have to have, not everything has to be a boss killer, but I think it makes it difficult because then you have to consider what is going to be your main way of killing bosses. Spine Chief isn't going to do it for the most part. You're going to have to find something better. You're going to have to find something like a Kinhost Carapace, some good eggs. You can find... Yeah, I mean, Shard Soul Carver is also okay, but you really can't rely on Spine Chief. What Echo Right does that's really nice is if you go with the egg route, he gives you some fantastic eggs, especially his rank 3 egg is like massive, it's huge, and it's very, very strong. And in addition, you have his bringing Consume cards back. I think that's his best path by far. It allows you to do some really, really crazy stuff. If you have, for example, like an Ember Drain package build, that means you have infinite Furnace Taps. So as long as you have the Ember to play it, you can just get in Furnace Taps forever and just keep playing them out, playing them out, playing them out. The one I did was with regen with a wildwood sap, but basically any of those you can abuse like crazy. As I said, I think his reap is vastly underpowered. I don't know if it needs to be reworked, but it becomes kind of awkward. The extract cards I think are the most powerful individual cards that you have. In particular, Soul Crushing Guilt and where is it? Soul Crushing Guild, Forced Contamination, and Proclamation are extremely powerful cards. If you have consistent Charged Echoes generation, these three cards go insane. I mean, I think you can see that in some of the runs that I did. Forced Contamination, adding 3 melee weakness. If you have a really powerful front hitter or a unit with quick, you can get insane damage numbers. Like, I mean, obviously mine was like way over the top, right? Like I had a unit doing 2,000 damage, so we ended up doing something like 12,000. But even if you don't have something that huge, like getting a Forced Contamination can just save you. I think it's an interesting clan. I think it's got a lot of really cool mechanics in it. I wouldn't say it's jumped to my favorite. As a package, it's somewhere around fourth or fifth out of the 6 clans in terms of strength from the cards. And I think Echo Right is probably mid tier, and I think Spine Chief is pretty low in terms of champion power and how good it is compared to the other champions. That's my impression. I need to play more with it, of course, to get a full impression, but that's my current impression. Oh, I also didn't talk about. Let me go to the next one then. So we talk about relics. Of course, I didn't see everything. There's still some stuff I haven't seen. Of the new relics, a lot of them I actually don't love. Capricious Reflection, I don't like it. I know some people might be feel differently, but I actually don't think it's good to have things come with random reward packs. Conscription Notice, I did never take. I don't see a value there either. I think a random summoned unit, maybe early game is quite good, but I think late game it becomes a liability. And I'm not too concerned about early gameplay. I'm mostly concerned about late gameplay. Faulty Loader is okay for certain builds. If you have something like what we had, where we had either an accumulator type build where you're trying to get a lot of harvest triggers, that can be quite good because then it gives you a little bit more time to prep. But I think for most builds, the first wave isn't the problem. It's more the later waves that become problematic, and their Faulty Loader doesn't do anything. I think Golden Vault makes playing against the Last Divinity potentially easier because you don't have to worry about all of the direct damage he's doing to your pyre. Outside of that, I think it's pretty weak. It will hurt you early game. It will help you late game. So if you can get this in your last trinket, I think it's quite good. It can help you win the Last Divinity because then you really don't have to worry about him shooting your pyre, which is pretty important. Him killing your pyre is a real thing. So being able to protect against that with your money, leftover money, I think is pretty good. Rationing Scales is the opposite. It's fantastic early game, and it is a huge liability against the Last Divinity. I think unless you are extremely confident that you will not have a single leak, you cannot take Rationing Scales if you're going to go against the Last Divinity. If anything leaks, you just lose. It's over. You don't have enough pyre health to survive one leaked unit and all of the damage the Last Divinity is doing to you. So I think Rationing Scales, again, it's a huge early game benefit. It just wrecks you late game. And I should also mention I'm doing all this based off of Covenant 25. Mark of Exile, there's the two of them. Mark of the Champion, Mark of Exile. I think it really depends on the champion. On Primordium, it's pretty bad. On Penumbra, on the other end, it's really, really good. Obviously on Titan Channel, both of them are going to be amazing. So it really depends what champion you get, but I think they can be extremely powerful. Lost Luggage, I think, is the best of the new relics. Easily, in my opinion, the best of the new relics. Having that flexibility to have 10 cards your first turn is, you really can't undersell that. That basically means you're going to have the pick of the units that you want or the pick of the spells that you want to play at the beginning. The only, I would say, asterisk to that is if you are worried about playing multiple units because of Ember cost, it can become a liability. But for the most part, having more cards that first turn is actually really, really huge. What are also new ones? Obviously, you have the 3 crap ones that get replaced by 3 pretty good ones. Immortality Potion. I actually don't know if it's worth taking Broken Wheel in order to get Immortality Potion. It's kind of, I don't know. I didn't know what it was when I took it. I don't think the payoff is as good, in my opinion. Corrupted Cloud into Vial of Tears is actually okay. So this is pretty good. Oh, free garbage contextually. So if you're playing against Seraph, the Diligent, then yeah, absolutely. Taking Sinner Salve is awesome. Making all your garbage free. If you're gonna go with Dante build, Sinner Salve is really good because then all of your blights are free. So that certainly helps. I wouldn't say it's like game winning, but it is certainly going to help. Having them purge on creation would be better, obviously, but because you still then they're still filling up your deck. You just don't take you're not going to take damage because you're always going to be able to play them. In Ember Drain builds, especially, this could be really extreme, but really really valuable. Yeah, that's true. Okay. I think that covers it. Then if you look at like specifically the ones added to Wurmkin, I think out of the Wurmkin ones, I mean, base charge is really strong. Uh, Dun Echo, no, Dun Echo is pretty good. Encased Divinity is really good. So especially with Extract, the nice thing about if Encased Divinity is that you can extract it multiple times in the same turn and it doesn't go away. So if you have something like a whole bunch of 2 extracts that also are creating charged echoes, then you can play them out like without having to lose any charged echoes, which is really solid. Decayed Decoy always sounded really good. I don't know that it was ever actually amazing. And extra 2 empty echo slots would be huge. Okay, I'm guessing that's this one here. Double consume card. That's actually really strong. Double consume card could also be really, really, really strong. So yeah, I mean, they're pretty good in context with the clan. I would say consume related stuff is going to be better because it's more general purpose. And with the exception of I think that these ones where you start with charged echoes is always good. Let's talk about the brand new unit starting with or units in each clan and then the new spell. So we have, he is a rare Apex Imp. Apex Imp is hilarious and can be broken very easily. Yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say. It's completely broken. It's very easy to go insane here. You just get him with something like, yeah, any type of consistent armor upgrades, and you just have an extremely high damage, high armored unit. Any of I mean, Reinforce here becomes insane. Ally of the Ancients is 25 rage. So it's 50 damage, basically. Really, really strong, right? So Apex Imp, I think, is a really strong addition and really emphasizes this whole armor rage aspect of the Hellhorned. Here we get Stalesinger, which I never actually played. I played him for his to get his thing, but I didn't actually play him. It seems really strong. I need to actually play it. It seems like a really strong hollow. I don't know. I need to play it, right? But it seems like it'd be really easy if you have the tools for it to be a standalone floor with maybe like, I don't know, one other unit with it and just go nuts with rejuvenation. Could be really, really strong. I need to test it out. So I don't have any opinions, but my feeling is, or I don't have any like experience, but my feeling is that it is an incredibly strong unit. One of the strongest units. Stygian Guard. I didn't ever see the unit. Hilarious. What's a Stygian Guard unit? Has anyone seen it? Has it been posted somewhere that I can see? Eel Gorgon. Incant, gain multi-strike, lose all stat effects. Oh, I remember that. Ah, yeah, that's right. Mixed feelings. I remember seeing it, and I remember, I obviously have no experience with it, but I kind of have mixed feelings. I need to see it in action, but I feel like it's underpowered. I think it's hard to take advantage of it, and it's really hard to, I guess you just put base stats on it, right? Because you don't want it to lose its status effects. Yeah, a little bit weird. It could be insane in a, actually it would be really bad in a Ember Drain deck. You can't even put it on it. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, weird one. I'd have to play with it, but I think it seems underpowered. Maybe with a Primordium build you could do it. Here we have Morsel Maid. Really love Morsel Maid. I think it's hilarious. It requires the proper setup. And the proper setup means you have to get something like, I would say an average of 3+ morsels per turn. If you're averaging 3 morsels per turn, I think it's great. If you're getting less than that, I think you would be better off picking one of the others. But if you're getting more than 3 morsels per turn, Morsel Maid's going to get really insane very quickly. That's +6/+6 plus whatever the morsels are giving you, which is pretty fast scaling. That's like Root Seeds level scaling, which is not bad. And the fact that you can play it in the back too. That's another really interesting thing. It's the only Gorger that you can play in the back, where all other ones you have to put up to the front. So it has some different mechanics, which is quite cool. Also combining him with Morsel Master is hilarious because then he just doubles everything that he can play, right? Hey, Chris. Melting Remnant doesn't get a unit, gets a spell, gets Hallowed Halls. I mean, you guys, if you haven't yet, I guess I should post those. Oh, I actually have it. It's uploaded. I just haven't had it go live yet. Hallowed Halls, man. It's a doozy. It can be amazing. It can be extremely stressful. I played it a lot with Hallowed Halls. I actually really think it's a fun card, but it is incredibly weird to play with. This is the defeat the Last Divinity with all clans card frame. But yeah, big fan of Hallowed Halls. I don't know if it's A tier, but I think it's hilarious and I like it. Really big fan of this card, just because of how fun it is. Creates a whole different style, whole different type of build, where you just kill everything, bring them all back, kill everything, bring them all back, which I think is a really interesting way to play. Let's talk about the Last Divinity as a boss, right? So I think the boss encounter is very interesting. I think, how do I say this? I think too much of the power in the Last Divinity is on the units. And I think there's not enough power in the Last Divinity himself. So first off, I love the encounter. I love the idea of a 3-floor encounter. I love the idea that each floor has a different kind of mechanic behind it. So one is a sweep, one is a multi-strike, one is a trample. It's awesome. I think that the purity is a little bit hard to swallow because it immediately negates frostbite builds. You cannot get a flying kill with a frostbite build, which I think is not fair to those builds. So I don't love that Purity completely negates Frostbite builds. It basically means with a Frostbite build, you have to get to Relentless, and then you have to get enough Frostbite during Relentless. And I think that is not, I think that's not fair to those builds, because all the rest are not affected. Even if it was like they fall off at twice the rate, maybe half is right. Maybe it needs to be chased level, right? You do half. Maybe that's right. I just think the fact that it removes it after it does damage is it's just so unfair. Maybe you do it like that. Like every time you take a tick, it halves it. Yeah, maybe that's the right way to do it. But it seems unfairly targeted to those Frostbite builds. And I think Frostbite builds struggle already. They're not consistent. Frostbite builds have the problem of often getting wrecked by units already, right? Like you have your Soul Guard Cold Channel build, and the units just kill Soul Guard because they do so much damage. Or you have your Chillwind Tethys build, and then you're only able to kill the front unit because Tethys doesn't have access to the back units. So already from the beginning, Frostbite is struggling. And then on top of that, even if you somehow manage to keep your Soul Guard alive, or you keep Tethys in a way to kill the back line, I think it's not fair to those builds. So what I would do, I would not change the damage numbers. I would potentially add a minor effect onto each floor. And what I was thinking was something like one floor does one sap. Like, for example, you could have the top floor sweep and sap. You reduce the damage, but it saps everybody every turn. That's one way you could do it. You could then have the multi-strike be something like, I don't know, a cleanse effect. So it hits twice, and then it cleanses that unit. And then you could have the bottom floor, the trample, be something like on harvest, get rage or something like that. So it builds up damage over time. I think you could do something like that without changing the raw damage numbers to make each floor unique, then more than just like, okay, I play the bottom floor if I have early damage. I play the middle floor if I have a strong tank. I play the top floor if all of my units can survive it. Like, I think it's having something more unique about the floors would improve the experience for me, because that's basically my thought process is like, but I love the idea. I like the encounter. I think the encounter should have the floors be more unique if possible. And I think it should not be so blatantly against Frostbite builds. That's the things I would change. Make the floors more unique, and nerf how much it just negates Frostbite builds. And then I think it's perfect. Shards. The only thing I think Shards should do different is it should tell you how it affects the combat before the combat starts. But I really like the way they implemented Shards. I think general all-purpose improvements is not the way to make Shards. I love that they hit specific units, and that those specific units not just have extra health, but they have extra stuff. They have damage shield, they have extinguish triggers, they have multi-strikes, they have, and then of course stat buffs. I don't know if they're balanced, but I like the way they implemented that across the board. I think it makes a lot of sense. I just wish it was more transparent. And it's one of the things that I think Monster Train could improve on in general. New players have no idea, for example, about priority units. New players have no idea about things like, morsels get gorged by burnout units. And units that burn out, their effects happen at the end of the turn rather than in the middle of combat. So I think it would be really good if they could make some more transparency. Like if you hover over them in combat, or even Chris, as you're mentioning, having an enemy page could do that you could see their corrupted versions at the different threat levels. And then as well, if they had it on the front, you could hover over them and it would show basic stats, and then at that threat level, this is what it will do instead. Because having that information helps you make decisions around trials. But the whole shard thing, I think, is fantastic. I think it's a fantastic risk-reward system. I think it's the best risk-reward system I've seen implemented in a game. I think it's on par with Hades level. I mean, Hades has the most flexibility in terms of being able to pick and choose exactly what you want to make more difficult. But I think it's more along that line, like where it's like it's a risk-reward. If you want to get the rewards, if you want to be able to face Last Divinity, if you want to be able to get these huge buffs, you take a huge risk. And I love that in this game. I think it's something that's really needed. Because Covenant 25 can get really stale, but now we have this, and maybe then I bring it back to Covenant levels. I think the 25 Covenants are fine. I think having the shards adds another layer of I want to push the limits of the game, which is something that I haven't really been able to do except for self-limiting challenges. Things like playing with modifiers, playing with mutators, playing with specific, we can only have 2 units, or we only play with the champion, or we don't use damage spells, or whatever, like self-limiting stuff. This is a way to like really, really crank up the difficulty, but it's based on my decision making and it's based on my timing. I can decide I want the early game to be rather smooth, and then I want the late game to get insane, or vice versa. I have a strong early game build that becomes more difficult later on, so I'm going to front load my shards to help me, and then later on not take anything new. So I think there's a lot of flexibility with it. I think it's really, really well implemented. I think some of the spell upgrades are not amazing. I mean, they're not all equal. The -2 cost and the +30 damage, I think, are easily the top tiers. I don't think Purge is worth 10. I mean, you saw me basically ignore it the whole time. I don't think Purge is worth 10 shards. I don't think Gold is worth 10 shards for the most part, unless you need it to get to the 100 or you really need to get an upgrade. The artifact, it really depends. I think early artifacts, it's pretty good. Late artifacts, it's not so good. And then the final mechanic, which is the sacrifice and combine, is amazing. Like, in terms of just adding more complexity layers to the game, it's amazing. And what's great about it is that you can ignore it if you don't like it. Like, there's no need. If you don't want to do the Last Divinity, if you don't want to face all of that, and you just want to play Covenant 25 with all of the stuff, you can do that. And I love that it's a choice. But I love that it opens up this whole new area of, like, what can I do? Get an Animus of Will with Overgorge. Get a Thorned Hollow with another incant on top of it. Like, unit fusing is so cool, and I think the way they implemented it is so smart, and it will completely change how people play this game. So in summary, what do I think? In terms of new content, there's not really a lot of new content. There's a new clan, which is arguably a lot. I mean, it's a brand new clan, and there's a new final boss. There's no new flying bosses. There's no new units. There's a couple of new cards and a handful of new relics. Content-wise, it's okay. In terms of like fleshing out the game to make it more dynamic, it adds a lot of layers. The shards layers, the fusing layers, the new upgrades that you can get with getting shards adds a whole new dimension to the game that makes it much, much more replayable. So, in my opinion, that's the star of the show, is this layering of the mechanics. What I'm hopeful for is that in the future, they add more content. So I love the DLC for the new mechanics and this kind of adding complexity. But I do want to see more just raw content. I think, and And I would say not even content in terms of, how do I say it? Not content in terms of like having more cards. I actually think having more dynamic combats, and then just I would like to see more enemies. I'd love to see more enemies, more bosses, more flying bosses in the future. Last Divinity as a boss is amazing. If they can get more combat encounters like that, like I'm all for it. But I'm really, really happy with the new mechanics. I'm really, really happy with the new end game, Covenant 25 Plus, that's going to come. What I don't know anything about yet is the new challenges. I haven't tried them. I wasn't going to spend time doing challenges. I just wanted to like get as much feeling for everything else first. So apologize if you were hoping I would do expert challenges. I think that covers all of my opinions. My expectation is it's probably going to be something like a $15 to $20 US dollar DLC. At that price, I think it absolutely makes sense. I mean, Monster Train by itself was not very expensive to begin with, and then on top of that, you're adding in basically an entire end game and an entire set of mechanics that broaden how interesting the game is, and I think that's certainly worth $15, $20. If it ends up being like the same as the full price of the game, it's maybe debatable. I think you would need more content to justify that, but something in that range, absolutely, it's going to be day one. But I mean, I'm going to buy it no matter what because I really have liked how dynamic it's been in the last few days compared to how it was before. So yeah, so assuming that this is what we get, I think it's a very well designed DLC. Some things that I have critiques on, but nothing apart from like some of this minor edge stuff. Core, I think, is really solid, and I think it's a right direction to go with the game. And with that, the name of the day has been Dirkus. You can call me Nate, you can call me Nathan, but please never call me Nathaniel, and I will see you guys in the next stream. Thanks for watching.